You might want to go grab some tape your jaw shut, because odds of your jaw being on the floor when you hear this story are high. But I'm happy to say it's the best ending to the worst story. Guys, this is the very first story I ever told on TikTok, and back then I pronounced her name wrong. I said Alison Botha, but I think it's Alison Botha. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably so wrong, but I just went to her TikTok profile to make sure I pronounced it correctly. She follows me. Alison, yeah, I'm never gonna get over that. Alison, message me, I need to talk. Nevertheless, this is the story of Alison Botha, one of the most insane stories I've ever heard to this day. Also, just want to say, in case Alison sees this, Alison, you were literally the biggest inspiration to so many people, and I look up to you so much, but let's get into it. The two perpetrators that Alison had the misfortune of meeting were France and Tiens. A little bit of background on both. France was the son to a policeman. Childhood, fine. When he was a teenager, not fine. He made friends with the wrong crowd, was an absolute menace, got expelled from school, causing him and his family to move to what was back then known as Port Elizabeth in South Africa. One of France's biggest and favorite hobbies became worshiping the devil. Yes, he got a girlfriend who claimed to be the head witch of a coven, and together they spent a lot of time doing rituals and manifesting demons. And I know Satanism doesn't always mean worshiping the devil, but in this case it does. France soon dropped out of school and started claiming that he was possessed by the devil. And then he went into the army. How scary is that? A man that is claiming to be possessed by the devil being in charge and around so many weapons. He left the army, got married, had a baby, abandoned his family, got married again, had another baby, and throughout it all he was still getting in trouble with the law, committing petty crimes, and continuing to claim that he had supernatural powers from Satan himself. At 26 years old, France meets 19-year-old Tiens. Tiens had a rough upbringing. He was not born into the greatest family, unfortunately. At 15 years old, he dropped out of school, turned to substances to cope, got involved in petty crime, and then eventually also joined the army. That was one of the things that him and France had in common, but Tiens also dated a witch girlfriend, and the two of them worshipped the devil together as well. France and Tiens met in June of 1994, and they would become a volatile pairing. France told his new friend Tiens that he possessed the power of the devil, and I think that Tiens started to look up to France a little bit. The two of them would go on to do horrible, disgusting things. They frequently visited graveyards in the middle of the night doing weird things, and then they would go on an SA spree. They would go out looking for women to attack an SA simply because they wanted to. And because France specifically thought that he deserved to, because he thought he was so attractive that women loved him, and he thought that he deserved to get whatever he wanted to get from them. Sick, sick, sick. On December 4th of 1994, France and Tiens essayed a victim together, a 21-year-old woman that was 3 months pregnant. After the attack, the woman went straight to the police station and reported it. France and Tiens got arrested, but released pending a further court appearance, and it was before that pending court appearance that Alison would be taken as their victim and put through things no human being should ever be put through, let alone survive. Alison surviving the things that she was put through was unheard of. To me, there's no other way to describe it other than a miracle, truly. Alison Botha grew up a very happy and loved girl. Her mother raised her in a beautiful way, and she was really raised to be such an incredible person with nothing but love to give. At the time of this case, Alison was 27 years old, and she was thriving, living her best life. She had graduated school, spent a few years traveling around, and had chosen to settle down in what was known back then as Port Elizabeth in South Africa. December 18th of 1994, it was a Sunday. After a fun night out with her friends, Alison came home after dropping off one of her friends at her apartment. She pulled into her parking lot, pulls in, parks her car, turns her car off, and all of a sudden someone swings open her driver's side door, and Alison is caught so off guard when she sees a man standing right outside her door with a sharp weapon. That man was 26-year-old France. He looked at her and said, quote, "Move over or I will kill you," end quote. At first, France keeps telling Alison that he's not gonna hurt her. He says that he just needs her car for something. Big fat lie. France asks Alison what her name is. She quicks quick on her feet and tells him a fake name. Alison asks France what his name is, and he also gives a fake name. And Alison is trying to keep her calm, incredibly good under the worst kind of pressure, but she is pleading for him to let her out of the car. She says, "Just let me out, you can keep the car." But France, of course, has bad intentions. He tells her that he just needs to go and find his friend, so they drive to go find this friend. The friend, who is none other than 19-year-old Tiens. Tiens gets in the back of the car, and his eyes look scary. They're just black. They just look evil, and I imagine Alison's stomach turned at just the sight of him. This was late at night, by the way. It was dark outside, and France drove the three of them until there was no other cars around, and he pulled into a secluded area. Tiens gets out of the car, leaving France and Alison alone, and France turns to her and says, "Are you going to fight?" And then he continues to SA her aggressively. Alison, in that moment, remembers trying to keep her dignity, aware of what was going on, but she kept thinking to herself, "He is doing this to your body, not to you. Your mind is safe. He can't touch your mind. You will get through this." She just kept repeating that to herself herself over and over again, trying to disassociate from what was going on, from the terrible situation that she was in. After Franz was done, he looked at Tien's outside of the car and asked him if he wanted to essay Alison, talking about her in the most degrading manner, and Tien says yes, and he goes in the car and he takes his turn in essaying her. After that, the two of them stand there and discuss if they should let Alison go or if they should kill her. And remember, the two of them are pending a court appearance for the essay case they just committed 14 days ago. So the two of them in their little pea-sized brains, they're like, no, we shouldn't let her go, because if we let her go and she goes to the police, we will get in more trouble. So the two of them think that they have no other choice but to murder her. They're having this discussion right in front of Alison, and because their brains are so small, they're talking amongst themselves, they're using their real names, Franz and Tien's, and Alison takes note of that, which is very important. Before she knew it, Alison was outside of the car on the ground. Franz was on top of her, attacking her with both of his hands around her neck, using as much force as he could, to the point where he crushed her windpipe, cutting off her air supply completely, causing Alison to zone out. Then Franz grabbed the sharp weapon, took it to Alison's stomach over and over again, like a frenzy attack 35 times, and him and Tien thought that that would be it. But then they realized that Alison was still alive, so they took the sharp weapon across her neck 16 times. And remember, Franz had crushed Alison's windpipe with his hands, and unknowingly so, when he took the sharp weapon, he cut through the windpipe, giving her air supply again. So basically, he did the opposite of what he was trying to do. Alison regains consciousness. She comes back to it when she hears Franz and Tien's again talking amongst themselves about whether or not they think she's still alive. When she hears this, she stays as still as she possibly can to make them think that she isn't. And it works. They leave her there, deciding that there was no possible way that she could have survived that attack. They throw her clothes that were inside of the car out of the car, and they drive off in her car. Alison is left there, lying on the ground in the dark in the middle of nowhere, attempting to assess the situation, trying to figure out what to do next, and I don't even know how. She had at least 50 injuries. I don't even know how your mind can come up with a clear thought, but she's trying to think when she hears a gurgling sound. She's confused for a second until she realizes that that sound is coming from her throat. The sound was her windpipe. They're just going in and out through it because she can't control it. She goes to feel her neck with her hand, but she feels nothing. Because her injuries are so severe, there's just a massive gaping hole, and she feels nothing but blood. Alison laid on that floor and she thought, I'm not gonna let them get away with this. I'm not gonna let them do this to another person. She thought that at the very least she would do what she could to hope and try and help her attackers get caught, which is when she took the little strength that she had left and wrote their names on the sand, Franz and Tien's. Right after that, she wrote on the sand what she wanted people to know that she was thinking about before she passed. She took her hand and she wrote, I love mom. And then Alison continued to lay there thinking that this was the end, but it wasn't. And Alison has said, quote, I realized my life was too valuable to let go of, and that gave me the courage to survive, end quote. That gives me chills every time. Also, now is a good time for me to tell you, if you have a queasy stomach, you should probably go. Alison started to move, thinking, I may as well give it my all. I'm not going to go down without a fight. When she started to get up on her feet, she was on her hands and knees when she felt something wet and something slimy on her feet. It was her intestines. Franz and Tien's had injured her abdomen so bad that her intestines were falling out of her body. She struggled trying to gather them back together, putting them back inside of her. When she noticed that her shirt had been thrown out of the car, she grabbed the shirt and used that to pack her intestines inside of her and pulled it as close as she could against her to try and keep them in. And Alison tried to stand back up again, but then her vision went black. She couldn't see anything, so she's holding her intestines in with one hand, and with the other she reaches up to her eyes to see what's going on, but she feels nothing. There's nothing there. Because of the injuries to her neck and her throat, her head was hanging off backwards. She couldn't see because her head was halfway detached off her body. So with her only free hand, she reaches up to her head behind her body, pulls her head forward kind of back in place, helping her vision return temporarily. She's literally holding her body together with both of her hands. I have no clue. The strength it must have taken is hard for me to comprehend. Alison managed to drag herself onto the road, the full moon lighting her path, hoping that somebody would stop and rescue her. When she got to the road, she collapsed. She saw headlights. One car drove towards her, but straight past her, but the second car stopped, thankfully. In that car was a man called Tien, not to be confused with the perpetrator Tien's. Other people were in the car as well, but he was a vet, so he had some sort of medical knowledge, and he was an absolute hero that night. As soon as he saw Alison's injuries, he ripped off his shirt and used it to apply pressure on Alison's injuries. Tian also noticed that Alison's thyroid was out of her neck, and he had some knowledge in medicine, obviously, so he knew how to place the thyroid back in place somehow, while one of his other friends called 911. The ambulance took so long to get there. 2 hours, 2 whole hours. What do you mean? But the entire time Tian was trying to do everything that he could to keep Alison with him. He came up with a system for her to squeeze his hand in response to him because she couldn't speak, obviously. And he kept telling her over and over again, "You have the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. Please keep them open. Please keep them open." After 2 hours, the ambulance arrived, rushed Alison to the hospital, and the entire time Tian refused to leave her side. Alison was immediately taken into surgery. The wound to her neck was so severe the doctors could see the top of her spine. Those doctors had to put in so much work to save her life, but luckily the doctor that was on call that night was a throat specialist. Like, what are the odds of that? I don't know, but the odds were in Alison's favor. Doctors have said if Tian didn't put her thyroid back in place or whatever he did, then Alison would not have made it. It was also found that the injuries to her stomach somehow missed every vital organ, and the injuries to her neck and throat missed every major artery. If that was not the case, then Alison would not have made it to see another day. Absolutely insane. But after hours of surgery, Alison survived, and she went into ICU for recovery. She couldn't talk after the surgery, obviously, so when talking to authorities, she just wrote down on a piece of paper her attackers' names. But get this, police said, "That's not good enough. We need you to say their names out loud." What? So the tube that Alison was literally using to breathe was taken out long enough so that Alison could say out loud, "My attackers were Fran's and Tian's." And only after that did police go and immediately arrest them. And when they were arrested, officers told them that they were wanted for SA and attempted murder. And they were so confused about the attempted murder because they thought that there was absolutely no chance that Alison had survived that, but against all odds, she had. They were both charged with 8 charges. They pled guilty and were sentenced to life in prison in August of 1995 with no parole. Oh, and by the way, in trial, France tried to blame his actions on the fact that he was possessed by Satan. So there's that. Alison was discharged from the hospital on New Year's Eve. She moved back in with her mom, who helped take care of her. But she still had so much recovery to do, not only physically, but also emotionally. But Alison knew that she wanted to use her story to help others. So she started traveling around the world, telling her stories in at least 35 countries, helping inspire other survivors to come forward and tell their stories as well. Since then, she has written 2 books, and Alison has said, quote, "The attack has put me on this path where I get to travel the world and help inspire other people," end quote. Alison met and married a man, and I think they are now separated, but doctors had told her that because of her injury she would not be able to have her own child, but I'm so happy to say that she was. Alison fell pregnant and she was able to carry her child full term, and Tian, our lovely hero Tian, became a doctor after that incident, and he was one of the doctors who helped birth Alison's 2nd child. How cute is that? Oh, and one more thing that's gonna make you guys mad for a second. In July of 2023, after only serving 28 years, Fran's and Tian's were granted parole and placed under supervision. When that happened, Alison posted on her Facebook page, she said, quote, "The day I hoped and prayed would never come. And I was asked, how will you feel if they ever get parole? My immediate answer was always, I'm hoping I'll never find out," end quote. Absurd. The people that did that are allowed to just be free and walk free? What do you mean? Because actually, what do you mean? But I'm so happy to say that this year in 2025, the decision to grant them parole was taken back. So both of them were sent back to jail, thankfully, and they will remain in custody, which makes me so incredibly glad for Alison, like, thank God. And I want to end this video with a quote from Alison. It reads, quote, "Remind yourself that you do not have to take responsibility for what others do. Life is not a collection of what happens to you, but of how you've responded to what has happened to you," end quote. I've known this story for a long time, and every single time that I talk about it or read about it or hear about it, it makes me want to cry. Again, Alison, on the off chance that you're seeing this, I'm gonna message you right now. I would feel incredibly grateful to have the chance to talk to you, and I hope that I told your story the way that you would want to have it told. But yeah, that's it from me today. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Alison's insane, inspiring story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.